23rd of October, 2:41 p.m. Naruhodo's Legal Consultancy. Oh, this room. It has been too long. It hasn't changed in the slightest, though. And it's been some 6 months, hasn't it? That is a long time for things to stay so familiar. I don't know when you might return, and I wanted everything to be as you'd left it. But it has been some 6 months, it's true. So is your father alright, Susie? What happened? My father? Yeah, Professor Makatoba. I mean, it was a half a year ago, but that's why you went back to Japan. Because of the telegram you received saying he'd fallen ill with a very high fever for some unknown reason? That's right. So, surprised to learn you'd be coming back so soon. Surprised, but happy. I think I wrote about it in my letter to you, that it was all a trick. My father is in fine health, and I am obviously very relieved about that. Well, we're all delighted to have you back. It was quite by accident that I've been able to return to Europe, actually. It's because of a very grand conference called the International Forensic Science Symposium. The International Forensic... That's the same symposium Lord Strongheart mentioned. Anyway, I have arrived safe and sound, and all that matters is that I'm here now. After all, I haven't yet fulfilled my promise to you, Iris. Oh. You must tell us everything that happened while you were back in Japan. Yes, of course, I shall. And there's one other thing. Something you wrote in your letter that particularly grabbed my attention. About you know who. About Kazuma. I know. I'll tell you all that I can. First of all, look at this. You're still taking good care of that armband, I see. I am so pleased. Well, yeah, it feels like I wouldn't be me without it now, to be honest. Oh dear, there seems to be a thread coming loose just there. Look. I'd be only too happy to mend it for you, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, thank you. I must have scraped it against something again. I'm always doing that. Then take better care of it, please. It was all going so well until I ruined it. Alright, never mind. Whew, alright, where do we start? When I first arrived back in Japan, I really thought I'd never be allowed to return to Britain. But curiously, after that awful trial at the Supreme Court, Father's mood changed entirely. The awful trial? Oh, yeah. For the murder of Giselle Brett? Oh, you dressed as a man then, didn't you, Susie? Oh, well, yes. Since women are forbidden in the courtroom, I had no choice. Wow, amazing. I wish I'd seen it. Don't you, Runo? Yeah, I suppose so. I want to play at being a lawyer now. I could wear a false moustache, maybe. I don't think any moustache could hide the fact that you're just 10 years old, Iris. There's something else I've been wanting to ask you, Miss Susato. It's about the real reason why Professor Makatoba summoned you back to Japan. You said in your letter it was something to do with that convict's loot we found in Mr. Natsumi's lodgings. That is right. The very large dog collar we found with the bee emblem on it. It seems Mr. Natsumi included a drawing of the collar in the report he submitted about his time in Britain. I understand that when Father saw the report, he turned as white as a sheet. Why would that be, then? Father came to Britain himself, of course, to study. It was some time ago now, but he stayed for 6 years. I can only imagine that something must have happened during that time. But if he refuses to tell me what it was, then I intend to find the answers for myself. And I've decided that I, for one, won't keep any more secrets. Susie. That's a very meaningful look Susato-san's giving Iris there. Alright. Giselle Brett. A woman whose unforgivable actions ended in me being wrongly accused of a crime I didn't commit. The murder of Dr. John H. Wilson. Yes, Giselle Brett. That's a name I won't forget for as long as I live. The extraordinary thing is, though, it seems it's a name we should all forget. Sorry? Since the incident, our government's intelligence services have been investigating Miss Brett. But it turns out that an Englishwoman by the name of Giselle Brett didn't actually exist. Didn't exist? But how can that be? It was a pseudonym. Her real name was Shin, and she wasn't a visiting student either. That was a front. A front? Who on earth was she then? Miss A. Shin. Her name is literally all our intelligence services have been able to ascertain about her. Nobody knows why or even how she came to be in Japan. It is a complete mystery. But that makes no sense. It's no easy task to be accepted as a foreign student anywhere. What could the woman have been up to? I'm afraid I really don't know. The only thing we can be sure of is that she had some business in our country that we don't yet understand. And now she's been killed, while all the questions surrounding her existence remains unanswered. I am afraid so. A. Shin. Who on earth was she? And why do I feel as though I've heard that name before somewhere? Lord Strongheart mentioned something about that symposium too. I think he said that investigative authorities from 40 different countries would attend. Yes, and from Japan my father and Judge Jikuko have been invited. It's something of an honor, I believe. Well, Professor Makatoba is the leading expert in forensic medicine in our country, after all. But who's the other person you mentioned? A judge, did you say? Yes, His Excellency Judge Shishiro Jikuko. You've met him, Mr. Naruhodo. Last year, in the Supreme Court. You can't possibly have forgotten. That terrible trial of yours, when you were accused of murder? Ah, yeah, I try to think of that as a positive turning point in my life these days. Well, it was Judge Jikuko who presided over that trial. If I'm perfectly honest, I'd be happy never to see that man's face again in my life. Oh, well, anyway, as father was invited to the symposium, he agreed to me returning to Britain too. He won't actually arrive until next month, but, well, I couldn't wait. So I pleaded with him, and in the end he agreed to me going on ahead. Yeah, about the symposium. It seems as though Lord Strongheart has put in an awful lot of work to make it happen. It's obviously very important. I believe it is, yes. As I understand it, Lord Strongheart organized the entire event himself. I think he is hoping that by achieving exceptional results, he'll get the job of Attorney General, the most senior position in the British justice system. He is hoping to use his power to create the world's finest policing institution. That is what Father said anyway. Apparently, it's Lord Strongheart's lifelong ambition. Does Professor Makatoba know Lord Strongheart personally then, I wonder? Actually, Lord Strongheart gave me a long speech all about this very subject only yesterday. But I sort of lost the will to live early on and didn't really listen to much of it. How trying for you. Yeah, so... After my friend Rhea's trial, the reporter who actually killed Miss Brett said something very strange. I know the truth. I know you had a hand in what went on. That visiting student's fate. Nobody here in Japan knows anything about it. They don't know that the guy never made it to England, that he died on that steamship, and that he'll never... Obviously, I couldn't ask him to elaborate at the time. But later, I visited the man in his prison cell and asked him what he was going to say about Kazuma-sama. And what did you learn? After he died on the voyage to Great Britain, his body should have been unladen at the port of Hong Kong and passed into the care of the consulate staff there. Should have been. Well, it turns out that his body never arrived. It just disappeared.
What? Kazuma's body's vanished?
Our government tried to cover the fact up, it seems. They erected a grave on the cliffs by our hometown. Except, Kazuma-sama isn't there. Did Professor Makatoba know about this? Yes, it would seem that he did. But he didn't tell me. They're still investigating what happened to Kazuma-sama's body as we speak. I just don't believe it. And what is this acute feeling of apprehension I have all of a sudden? It's gotta be him then. He is the masked man. That's him. That's Kazuma-sama. I'm predicting this from now. I've had suspicions when I first met him. And also, Rinnosuke commented about how he holds himself like he's seen him before. That's Kazuma, I'm telling you right now. Thinking back now, some of the things that happened on the SS Bury were definitely strange. I mean, after he died, we never saw his body again, did we? Could it be that he's actually still alive? Stop it, Mr. Naruhodo. It is too much to bear. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Just thinking about the possibility pains me so very much. Ouch. Cast your mind back for a moment, Mr. Naruhodo. When Kazuma-sama was discovered, Mr. Sholmes was there, wasn't he? And he definitely examined the body. I remember it clearly. You're right. So if Kazuma hadn't actually been dead at all, it would mean that Mr. Sholmes had lied to us. But there's no reason why he would possibly have done such a thing. I suppose that's true, yeah. The idea that he might still be alive somewhere, it wants to fill me with hope. But I can't let it, because if it turned out not to be true, then I'd be back at the bottom of that awful pit of despair again. I am terrified of what that might do to me. Oh, Mrs. Sato. I know she's given the idea the thought it deserves. It's Hosato-san we're talking about after all. So I probably shouldn't push it now. Alright then. So, what do you think about this? About this paper, Mr. Sato? Yes, it's all about the great exhibition. I've been dreaming about it, you know. I was sorry that you were gonna miss it when you were called back to Japan. So was I. I felt desperately unlucky. But here I am, back in London, while it's underway. It is a dream come true. Perhaps you're not as unlucky as you thought then. Once we've helped Professor Harebrine out of this terrible situation, we should all explore it together. And of course, we must invite the Professor's good friend, Lord Van Zieks, as well. Your luck might not stretch that far. Mrs. Sato, do you see this? You have such great expectation in your eyes, Mr. Naruhodo, but I'm afraid nothing particularly useful comes to mind at all. Oh, sorry. I'm not sure what I was expecting, really. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna try to present everything I have here. This was used to shoot down the balloon, wasn't it? Yeah, with a flaming arrow. It's quite a formidable weapon. I am quite accomplished with a longbow myself, you know.
No, really?
If you were to balance an apple on your head, Mr. Naruhodo, I am quite confident I could hit it from a good 50 meters away.
Quite confident, you say? Does the apple necessarily have to be on my head?
And which head are we talking about? Mrs. Otto, do you see this? No. Okay. Mrs. Otto, do you see this? Mrs. Otto, do you see this? Come on, it's the alleged murder weapon. Mrs. Otto, do you see... Really? I gave her everything I've got. Is it really time to move on, then? Where's Iris? There she is. You've been sitting there quiet.
It must be about a year ago now. I wrote a really long story based on some of my father's old notes. It's about one of Early's greatest exploits. I called it The Hound of the Baskervilles.
But then Mr. Sholmes forbade you from publishing it, and put the manuscript somewhere nobody could get their hands on it.
So nobody knows anything about it apart from Early and I. But for some reason, you knew the total of it, didn't you, Susie?
Oh, it sounds so exciting. The Hound of the Baskervilles. I should love to read it.
And you wouldn't tell me how you'd come to know it.
Yes, but I made you a promise that I would explain one day, didn't I? I think it's time. Oh! I'm only sorry I've had to keep it from you for so long, Iris. It was completely by accident that I came to know the title of your manuscript, Iris. It was a short while before we left Japan. I was cleaning Father's study, and I saw something on his writing desk. Oh. A large box of papers. There was a label affixed to the box that was written in English. It reads, The Hound of the Baskervilles.
What? My Baskervilles story?
Of course, I had no idea what it was at the time, but Father came in and...
Susanna, what are you doing?
Oh, Father?
Did you look at those papers?
No, I simply read the label, that is all.
Well, put it out of your mind.
Sorry?
Forget that you ever saw it. I certainly don't tell anybody else about this. Do you understand?
But what was Iris's manuscript doing in Japan? I have no idea. But when I heard Iris mention the word Baskerville that day, the title just slipped out. I would never have guessed that it was an unpublished account of one of Mr. Sholmes's exploits. When I returned to Japan, I asked Father to explain, but he refused to answer any of my questions. And there was no sign of the big box in his office. Oh. Are we talking about the big box that they've been using as a table? That big box? That is really all I know about it. I have no doubt that Father has a very good reason for being so secretive about it, but still. I made up my mind to explain myself to both of you.
Well, thank you for being so honest, Susie.
So, Mr. Naruhodo, I am ready to start investigating if you are. I've committed every detail about the case to memory. And Iris has told me about the disturbing happenings at the Waxwork Museum as well. So, you're fully abreast of the situation already, Mr. Sara. I expected nothing less, to be honest. I would think our first port of call should be to investigate this Mr. Drebber, the engineer responsible for building the elaborate machine that was used to effect this extraordinary trick. Yeah, a conjurer of sorts, by the sound of it, well known in the fields of science and magic. Then we need to go and arrest him. Well, yeah, he must know the truth behind this case, so I agree, we really need to do this. So I agree, we really do need to find the man.
Sounds like it's a case of tracking someone down.
Which is a job for the police, or a great detective. Are we supposed to guess who she might be thinking of? We don't have much time, so we need to get started straight away, I think.
Good idea. Well, best of luck then.
You're not coming today?
I'm going to Bristol Road shortly for the herb market. But let me know later how you got on, won't you?
That was a little abrupt. The pull of the herb market must be strong. The call of the herbs. Alright. Before we start investigating the case, let's start investigating this room. Thinking back, that spade's been there since we first moved in, hasn't it? I am sure I've told you before, Mr. Naruhodo, it is not a spade, it is a shovel. No, shovels are for digging. That's for scooping up loose material. It's a spade. No, spades are for digging. That is for scooping up loose materials. It's a shovel. The great spade shovel war rages on. Great. Oh, I'm so looking forward to making you some tea again, Mr. Naruhodo. Which you'd think I wouldn't like, given that I'm not keen on bitter flavors. But it is Susato-san's tea. And it's amazing what a little cake or something on the side can do. I would dearly love to serve you some sort of Japanese sweet alongside your matcha green tea. But I suppose that is simply not possible, given how long we've been staying here in London. Well, I do like the little chocolates you put in with my tea. They go wonderfully. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, you would, wouldn't you? That gives me a warm glow inside for some reason. Okay. You have water gently boiling on the stove, I see. It feels wrong somehow if I can't hear the water bubbling away. And we have plenty of logs. It's not like we have to worry about paying for gas. It is important to open the window for fresh air when the fire is burning, though. You can't keep it closed just because it's cold outside. It could be a matter of life and death. Avoiding the freezing winter air is a matter of life and death, too, if you ask me. Oh well. Perhaps a nice cup of tea will warm you up later. Looking forward to it. You see, I've been keeping my desk beautifully covered in papers as always. You really must tidy it all up, Mr. Naruhodo. No more excuses. But Mr. Sato, the way I see it, all these papers building up on my desk like this are a reminder of my wonderfully diverse daily life. I like to leave them as they are, so I never forget how lucky I am to have such a varied experience. In that case, you should definitely have a thorough tidy. Then you'll be able to see your papers building up all over again and feel that joy renewed. Still can't beat her in an argument, even though I'm the lawyer here. Yeah, but she's a woman, so. I see your Dharma still has only one eye filled in. Well, we agreed that it's something we'd do together, didn't we? We could do it right now if you like. I'd be happy with that. I rather like the anticipation, I think, Mr. Naruhodo. Well, we're not gonna be here forever. We gotta do this sometime. That was taken when I left London, wasn't it? I have the same photograph on display in my room at home in Japan, you know. I wondered if we'd ever all be together again, to be honest. Oh, I know. So did I. But here we are, and I'm quite sure there's a reason we've been brought back together. I can't deny that having Susato-san back again makes me feel as though fate has something big in store for us. What do you think about that ladder, Susato-san, huh? What do you think about that? Any comments? I left your desk completely untouched, Miss Susato, so it would be ready for you whenever you return. It's beautifully clean. There isn't a speck of dust on it anywhere. You've been cleaning in my absence, Mr. Naruhodo. Whatever next? Well, I couldn't allow my great assistant's desk to sit there gathering dust, could I? It really is exactly as it was when I left. I am so touched. But sadly, your desk is also exactly as it was too. Well, that's how it should be after all. Oh dear, I'd forgotten how that clean-cut smile can be so disarming. What? I am so pleased to see all our sea creatures doing so well in the aquarium. Yeah, the prawns are still swimming and the anemones are still swaying. Obviously, I've been looking after them carefully. At first, I used to drool whenever I looked at those juicy prawns, but not anymore. They're like part of the family now. I don't suppose they'll ever know how close they were to meeting their maker. Your room through there should be exactly as you left it. I've still never been inside. I've never been invited. Of course not. Only Iris is allowed in my room. No doubt I'll be hearing you two giggling away in there again then. Alright, and we're done. Let's go downstairs, shall we? Thank you. Anybody home? Sholmes? No? Huh. Nobody's here. For now, at least. Iris is out getting some herbs, and Sholmes is doing something else. This blackboard is where Iris scribbles down her latest ideas, isn't it? Let's see. Oh, she seems to have drawn a lot of little stick figures all lined up. Look. Cheap apples at the market is what all of them say. What? Little figures can speak. All your questions would be answered if only you would read this month's Rants magazine. So I'm the only one who can't make any sense of this? Little apples at the market? What? Iris's pretty little tea set is set out beautifully as ever. Look. Well, it is only by carefully taking care of a tea set that you can make good tea. Is that a roundabout way of telling me I need to tidy my desk? Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, you do overthink things at times. That is Iris's wonderful collection of medicines, potions, and chemicals. Just look at all the little bottles she squeezed onto the shelves. Yeah, and there are charming little ribbons tied around the bottles, too. But the labels aren't quite so charming, are they? This one here reads, Deadly Poison. Oh, I've been so excited about the idea of helping Iris with her experiments, you know. Just try to avoid any bottles labeled Deadly Poison, Highly Explosive. Yeah. My eye is always drawn to this big metal chest that Mr. Sholmes and Iris use as a coffee table. Isn't it where Iris keeps her very important papers? It is, so you'd think that they treat it with more care, really. But only the other day, I saw Mr. Sholmes kick it. Oh no! I suppose something must have been frustrating him. What a shame to mistreat the furniture, though. Was it damaged? The chest was fine, but Mr. Sholmes was doubled up on the floor for almost 10 minutes. Oh dear, that is a painful tale. This is Mr. Sholmes' famous violin.
The one he found being sold for a song at a pawnbrokery. What's it called again? A shoddy something?
Oh yes, this wonderful instrument features in the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. It is a world-famous Stradivarius.
What?
Stradivarius, Mr. Naruhodo.
Stregavor.
Are you even trying now?
We'll come back to this another time, I think. There's all sorts on these shelves. Chemistry apparatus, books, papers, and lots of things I've never seen before. It's all heaped up so high, I can't help feeling that the whole lot is gonna topple at any moment.
It looks as though it might topple, and yet it doesn't. The epitome of Mr. Sholmes' brilliance.
I don't get it. As it happens, I'm quite well practiced when it comes to stacking shelves myself. Just the other day, the shelf in my office finally gave way under the strain, though.
It looks as though it might topple, and it does. Yes, the epitome of your disarray.
I really don't get it. Alright. Let's get out of here. We've been advised to speak or find Drebber, but we don't know where he is, so okay, let's just go by order. Let's go here. Let's see if the Lord Chief... what? Ooh, what's going on here? Who's that standing beside Lord Strongheart?
I wonder. I've never seen her before.
Ah, the young champion of the court. You had some success this morning, I understand. And you've thrown the entire government into disarray as a result.
Oh. You mean because of Professor Harebrain's experiment?
Sham science being demonstrated at London's great exhibition. The country's been made to look foolish, and now politicians are scrambling to respond. Lord Van Zeeks is in Whitehall as we speak, given an emergency briefing.
Oh dear, I didn't mean to cause any trouble.
None of this is your responsibility. The government is entitled to blame for having been taken in. The special dispensation that prevents investigation at the scene will be annulled later today. Once that happens, my forensic investigation team will move in and deal with that scrap metal in no time.
It's scrap metal now, is it? Until later then, Lord Strongheart.
Yes, thank you.
Who was that?
That was Dr. Courtney Scythe, Scotland Yard's esteemed chief coroner. She's leading the forensic investigations team handling of this case. She was just delivering a report about the victim, in fact.
Oh, I see. About Mr. Asman.
Following the outcome of the trial earlier, I asked the coroner's office to re-evaluate its findings. I don't have time to tell you what she concluded. If you want to know, you'll have to ask her directly. You can find her in the forensics laboratory.
Right.
Now, what were you here to see me about? I can give you 7 minutes and 39 seconds of my time.
So he's not running quite so spectacularly late anymore. Alright. I wanted to ask you about Lord Van Zeeks, actually. I heard that his older brother was killed some years ago by a mass murderer known as the Professor, who targeted nobles and royalty. Is that right?
You Japanese are a thorough lot. You've done your research well. Yes. And you could say it was that very incident that gave rise to the Reaper.
What? Why?
When his brother, Clint Van Zeeks, was murdered, it was just after young Barrack had graduated from the University of London and become a prosecutor. When obvious criminals who managed to evade conviction in court started disappearing, rumors quickly spread throughout the capital. Londoners started to say that whenever Barrack Van Zeeks went, the ghost of his dead brother wasn't far behind.
Oh my word. So, Lord Van Zeeks isn't the Reaper? It's the ghost of his brother?
Ever since that time, he became a very aloof figure in London's legal circles.
Oh yeah. What exactly is the forensic investigation team that you mentioned before?
The British Empire's police force must become the most exemplary in the world. For that to happen, it is imperative that we embrace forensic science and everything it has to offer. I first created the forensic investigation team a year ago now, unofficially of course, to pave the way.
Goodness, a year ago?
At next month's symposium, I intend to present the results of their work to the world. Once I do that, the House of Lords will be powerless to oppose the creation of a full-scale forensics division. And once that happens, the position of Attorney General will be mine, and criminals will suffer dearly.
What do you mean?
For too long, those scoundrels have made a mockery of our legal system with false evidence and bribes. But London's scum is about to be rounded up and burnt in the fires of hell. I intend to see it to it personally. By creating the finest police force the world has ever seen and known to protect our honor and our future.
Look at those eyes. He means every word.
Dr. Scythe is an extremely reliable coroner. When I officially establish the forensics division at Scotland Yard, she will run it as my right-hand woman. Now then, speaking of the symposium, Miss Beketoba.
Yes, my lord? Yes, my lord?
Your father should be on the high seas as we speak, making his way here to represent the Empire of Japan.
Yes, that is right. I understand that he will arrive at the beginning of next month. Are you acquainted, Lord Strongheart? With Professor Meketoba, I mean?
It was many years ago now, but yes, I remember Dr. Meketoba very well.
Go on then.
If my memory serves, it was some 15 years ago now that your father came to Britain as a visiting student.
It was the year I was born. So yes, 16 years ago in fact.
Meketoba was a young practitioner of forensic science, and Chikaku accompanied him as a young, promising judge. The punctiliousness and politeness of the Japanese at the time impressed us greatly. Not that I wish to imply impoliteness or carelessness on your part in any way.
I didn't think that you were.
Dr. Meketoba studied forensics at one of London's large hospitals. St. Sinners, if I'm not mistaken. Dr. Scythe was also there then as it happened.
Then Dr. Scythe knows my father, does she?
She was a young medical assistant at the time, so I doubt their paths crossed regularly. But I've no doubt they knew each other superficially. After all, Dr. Meketoba was here studying his subject for some 6 years in total.
6 years? That's a long time to be studying abroad, isn't it? I lived with my grandmother in those years. So he left his newly born daughter behind and went overseas for 6 whole years? It was a rather turbulent time at home. Perhaps father wanted a reason to get away. What do you mean? Why? Well, clearly something was going on at the time. Oh yeah, Lord Strongheart.
Go ahead.
It's about Professor Harebrain's experimental machine. We'd like your permission to examine the remains, if possible.
Are you well versed in science then?
Not in the slightest. In fact, you could say I was barely aware of the subject at all until recently.
Well, a special dispensation legally preventing investigation on the machine is currently being annulled. Within a few hours, Dr. Sai's team of forensic experts will begin their own investigation. But I suppose until then, there's no harm in you looking at the wreckage as long as you touch nothing.
Thank you. Being able to look at it is better than nothing. And I'll be able to see it too.
Your time is up. You'll have to excuse me now, I'm afraid. My next engagement calls.
We are extremely sorry to have troubled you when you are so busy, my lord.
I have important matters to attend to in preparation for the symposium. You understand?
Huh. And off he goes. Just sitting behind that desk must make you feel so important, don't you think? Would you like to have an office like this, Mr. Naruhodo, with such a grand desk? Who, me? No, I don't think so. Oh? Well, imagine if you suddenly found yourself needing the toilet. You'd have so far to go. How true. Perhaps the important people who work in ostentatious offices like this haven't considered such things. I'm gonna take that as a compliment. As ever, the enormous clock is diligently maintaining its rhythmical tick-tock today. Watching machinery at work can be quite mesmerizing, can't it? Ironically, you can completely forget the time. What I particularly enjoy is watching the enormous wheels of a steam locomotive turning. When I was a little girl, grandmother often used to take me to watch the railway engines, you know. It's an open fire for me. I could sit and watch the flames for hours. Mr. Naruhodo, we could install one in the office. An enormous wheel turned by an enormous steam engine. Perhaps we could start with a simple fireplace. You can read all those books even if you were reincarnated 6 times over as a bookworm. Can Lord Strongheart really have read all these? Thinking about it, Father's study is full of books that look as though they've never been read too. Oh, really? Peddlers of books are forever pushing their wares on him, you see. And I think he's just too kind-hearted to refuse them. There's a phrase for that in Britain. People would say they saw him coming. What? It makes me wonder if perhaps the vast number of books on the shelves in here are a sign of Lord Strongheart's overwhelming kind-heartedness. I'm not sure you could afford to have a kind heart if you had to keep Lord Van Zeeks in line, could you? Yeah, that's a good point. These very European suits of armor are still glaring at each other across the carpet, I see. In a way, they feel like guardians of the Lord Chief Justice's office. I suppose they're rather like the lion dogs that guard shrines in Japan, aren't they? Aren't they a bit too human to be called lion dogs? Did you know that it is a dream of mine to keep 2 cats one day? I feel as though we've gone off at a bit of a tangent, don't you? Alright though. Time to go. Let's go now and check on our defendant. Or yeah. Oh dear. What's he doing? He is... Oh my, the whole wall of the cell is covered in mathematical equations. And he's still writing more now. Professor, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, Mr. Naruhodo. And who is this young lady?
My name is Susato Makatoba. I am Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. It is a pleasure to meet you, Professor.
Oh, if only I'd met a refined young woman like you sooner. None of this would have happened. Nine, that's not logical. That makes no sense at all.
Oh dear, I am sorry if my presence here upsets you. I owe you an apology too, Professor. I didn't manage to deliver what I promised you. I didn't manage to deliver what I promised you I would in court this morning.
Oh, nine. The whole thing, the whole miserable affair. It all happened because I've been such a complete and utter clot.
Professor Hairbrain, what have you been working on in your cell?
You mean that? Oh dear, how embarrassing. I was suddenly struck by an idea, you see, and I simply had to write it down. The war was all I had to hand.
Oh, is it some new hypothesis? Something to surpass super high voltage instantaneous kinesis, maybe?
9, actually. This is my autobiography.
Your autobiography?
How I Was Diddled and Fiddled by Albert Hairbrain. I found I could represent my odd fortunes with only odd numbers in an ambitious set of simultaneous equations.
Really?
I am going to have to pay back all the loans I took for the kinesis machine, you see. So it's going to be a new serial publication from next month. Part 1, An Odd Birth, An Odd Upbringing.
You can't beat the man's optimism, that's for sure. I see. Well, for now, would you mind if we talked a little more about the case?
Oh yeah, of course. I've been working through the numbers. I was fiddled by the pair of them. By husband and by that aloof engineer chamber.
We're not gonna have to sit through an explanation of all these equations, are we? Well, let's find out. First of all, Professor, do you recognize this?
Oh, it's Andrew, my faithful friend. How have you been? Are you alright? Nobody mistreated you, have they?
Don't worry, he's been very well looked after.
I always wrap him with machine oil until he's gleaming.
Right.
And then, when I come to tighten the screw with him, he slips in my hand and I can't do it. It's that age-old problem faced by driver files the world over, isn't it?
I really wouldn't know, I'm afraid. Alright.
How could this have happened?
You must feel awful. As well as a man losing his life, the Crystal Tower was greatly damaged too.
I know what happened. It must have been that.
That?
The day before the demonstration, I had my usual meal of frankfurters at the hotel restaurant. When I paid the bill, they gave me 3 shillings too much in change. But instead of saying anything, I just slipped the coins into my pocket. They're still there now. It's divine retribution for my wrongdoings. That's what this is.
For a scientist, he has some very illogical anecdotes. Long and illogical. Alright. Let's talk, Professor.
Everything I believed in has been turned on its head. My research, Mr. Asman, the kinesis machine, my hypothesis even.
I'm sorry it's come to this. There was really no other way.
9, it's not your fault. I wanted to protect my work, but in the end, there was nothing worth protecting. It was never my intention to deceive anyone. I didn't want to trick the public.
No, of course you didn't.
But in court this morning, I realized something.
Oh?
If you've done something wrong without knowing it, you've still done something wrong. Logically, it makes no difference if you're aware of it or not. Ignorance is a poor excuse. The blame still lies with me.
Oh, Professor.
He believed in me this morning, you know. Barak did. He believed in my hypothesis.
Well, I think that was just a necessary factor in the prosecution establishing its case.
Nine. Barak wouldn't do something like that. I'm sure he genuinely believed it. Did he? I think I understand now. Why it was that he decided to take on the prosecution in my trial, I mean.
Oh yeah?
After the terrible accident happened, nobody would believe in my hypothesis anymore. Not the police, not the prosecution service, not any lawyers even.
I feel like I dealt some kind of finishing blow there.
So if any other prosecutor had taken the case, if it was anyone other than Barak, I am sure the prosecution would have declared my hypothesis a complete and utter nonsense.
And in that case, you would have been declared a fraud yourself, Professor.
Exactly, which would have been a fate worse than death for me. But Barak insisted that I was a proper man of science from start to finish.
You think that's why he...
I know him very well indeed. He's an extremely kind-hearted soul.
But that extremely kind-hearted soul spent all morning trying to paint you as a murderer, didn't he?
Well, admittedly, that part of the analysis appears to have some flaws in it.
What about the whole Reaper side of things? How does that fit in with the kind-hearted soul idea?
Do you think he set out to trick me from the very start?
I'm sorry to say, that does seem likely, yeah.
When I first met him, he introduced himself as a wealthy financier. He looked over the paper I'd written and said my work would benefit all humanity and must be pursued. He was so enthused, he was so empathic.
But in reality, he was the mastermind of some vast criminal network, it seems.
I still can't believe it.
As the machine was essentially a set decoration for some stage magic, it probably didn't require a large amount of investment, actually. But the scale of it, it wasn't just some small trick. It was a very elaborate feat of deception.
All young scientists are full of hope about their burgeoning ideas, full of zeal. But none of us have any money. We want to do research, but we can't afford it. Many of us take on barely legal part-time work to try to earn just a few measly pennies to carry on. To go through all of that, only to be taken for a complete fool. It's too rotten to believe.
It is, I agree. And that's why we had to find those responsible and bring them to justice. Mr. Asman is no more, of course, which leaves only the engineer. Mr. Enoch Drebber. Is he an engineer or a magician or a swindler?
It was about a year ago when Mr. Asman first brought Jabba to meet me at my laboratory. Since then, I've met him many times to discuss details about the kinesis machine.
But at no point did you have any inkling that he was just an illusionist?
Oh, he definitely wasn't just an illusionist.
What do you mean?
He was a wealth of deep scientific knowledge. There's no question that the man is a genius. There's no question that the man is a genuine scientist. It's instantly apparent in conversation.
I see. But the wretched man deceived you, Professor. It's unforgivable. We must do everything we can to find him and bring him to justice. Are there no more clues you can give us as to his whereabouts?
I'm sorry. We only ever discussed the kinesis machine. Nothing else. Although, just once, I did visit his workshop.
What workshop?
Jabba's enormous fabrication laboratory, where he constructed my great machine.
Why didn't you mention this before? Enoch Drebber's workshop? There's every chance we might find the man there.
So you've been to Drebber's place of work then?
Yeah, just once, you understand. It was an enormous place. Plenty of rooms to construct the Crisis machine, you see.
Where can we find it? We have to go there at once. There's a good chance that we'll find Drebber there.
Well, yeah, definitely. I'm sure. I'm sure you're not going to want to hear this. But I have absolutely no idea where the workshop is at all. I'm so sorry.
I was more than half expecting that.
You see, I was blindfolded in the carriage the entire way there.
He blindfolded you? He wasn't taking any chances then.
The place was incredible, the pinnacle of modern engineering. Even the oil he used was the very best, a special French machine oil that's impossible to obtain in Britain. The indescribable scent of that imported oil. Perfumers across the world should forget the secret formula and use that instead.
What do you think, Mrs. Sato? Eau de machine for your next birthday? I have never used any kind of perfume, Mr. Naruhodo, and I'm not sure I'd like to start with that. I don't suppose you know even part of the workshop's address, Professor? You don't have a business card from Mr. Drebber, for example? The man was clearly very cautious, Mrs. Sato. I'm sure...
Ah! Yeah, I do. He gave me his business card once. It's right here, look.
What? Let me see that. Throw etiquette to the wind, why don't you? Enoch Drebber, engineer. I'm afraid that is all it says. There is no address. No. Oh well, I can't say I'm surprised. Still, this could be useful. What about the back? Oh! This dark smudge here. I think perhaps it is machine oil. Ah, yeah, possibly. Professor Harebrine mentioned something about the oil Mr. Drebber uses, didn't he? He said it was especially imported, very high-quality oil that's impossible to obtain in Britain. Yes, that is right. But more importantly, that it's more fragrant than the finest perfume. So, excuse me for a moment. Oh, it doesn't appear to have any scent at all. Don't worry. I expect that's just because there's such a tiny amount on here. Okay. What are these two symbols? A rectangle and a cross? Professor Harebrine, what do you make of this?
Oh yeah, that's just what we need to prove my hypothesis, isn't it?
No, it's nothing to do with your hypothesis, actually.
So take it away. I don't want to be bothered with anything that doesn't resist my science.
Alright, keep your abundant hair on. Huh. Anything to do with the science? Yeah. Alright, I guess that's it for Professor Harebrine for now. I'm sure he'll come back later.